Once again, we come into a topic that I haven't been talking about in a while, and that is localization. Let's talk about Xenoblade Chronicles 2 that is going to be released for Nintendo Switch. The reason why we're going to talk about Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is because the last game, Xenoblade Chronicles X, was censored. How was it censored? Well, the Japanese version has a boob slider, which was censored in the Western version. They also have an underage character to have the bikinis to be removed. Here's the thing, guys. I don't really care about whether or not Xenoblade Chronicles X has a boob slider. I care about what the change actually says about the Western culture. This means that there are groups of people in the West who doesn't like the fact that the game has a boob slider. Who are those people? Well, I don't know, but I can say one thing for sure. They will not buy this game at any point in their lives. They will not buy the game when the game was released, and they will not buy the game by the time they made the changes for them. I don't think someone in the entire world would say, oh, I would love to buy Xenoblade Chronicles X, but it has a boob slider, and I don't feel comfortable for it. It's the most insignificant aesthetic change in the entire game, and that's what you care about? The people who are going to buy this game are JRPG fans and Xenoblade Chronicle fans. These people are a lot more familiar with the culture of Japan than anyone else in the gaming community. Certainly more familiar than anybody who demands these boob sliders to be removed. To change this feature to appeal to the people who are not weebs, you will risk losing the customer base that you already own. And trust me, I've had way too many people among my subscribers and also among other channels as well, like Censored Gaming, saying that they're not going to buy any games that are censored because they know for sure that these games aren't made for them. They're made for the moral busybodies, obviously. But how does I won't buy the game because they changed the boob slider make you to not look like a creepy, pathetic weeb? Well, they're a hell of a lot less pathetic than the people who thought, wow, this boob slider makes that one character to have bigger pixels in their breast. That is offensive. Let's remove them. Anyway, Xenoblade Chronicles X is censored, and it's localized by Nintendo of America, so there are concerns that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 will be censored as well. I'm going to show you something that I honestly cannot form a concrete opinion on. The reason is the facts that I have for this matter is so little. The best way for us to form an opinion on this is to wait for any localization news or wait for the game's actual release, which is what you should do anyway to any game ever. Wait until people play the game and wait until they form opinions on it. But regardless, I'm going to show you the facts that we know for now regarding the localization of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 will not be localized by Nintendo of America, but it will be localized by Nintendo of Europe, who also localized the original Xenoblade Chronicles. In response to being censored, here's what the Monolith Soft CEO Tetsuya Takahashi said.
I think what's important is that we make sure that the end user who actually plays the game doesn't have a bad experience. If that change is going to help alleviate that, then I think we should definitely make it.
All three, Nintendo of America, Nintendo of Europe, and the director of the game, Genki Yokota, are communicating about the localization decisions that may prove to be controversial for the game. Here's what Yokota had to say.
When we have costumes or clothes that we have little concern with, we share it with Nintendo of Europe and Nintendo of America, and they'll say, no, that's fine, or you're right, that's an issue. If it is an issue, we'll go back and we'll say, we adjusted it this way, what do you think? There's a lot of back and forth in that sense. Rather than compromise, it's like we're all aiming for the same goal, of being able to provide a good experience for everybody in all regions. And we're aiming to have a game that has very little difference between the regions.
In other words, the Japanese version of the game, it's going to have little to no difference in terms of costume and aesthetics to the Western version of the game. So you don't know whether or not a costume is censored from the Japanese version. The final version of the game is the final version of the game, across all regions. So if you're seeking to import the game from your favorite Japanese online stores, might as well not, because there won't be too much changes. This brings us into a rather interesting conversation. The only way for us to figure out why and how Xenoblade Chronicles X was censored is because we put a comparison between the Japanese and the Western version, and we all come to the conclusion that the Western version is censored for Western sensibilities, whatever that means, or culturalized. We'll get to that in another video. Say what you want about Xenoblade Chronicles X, they localized it post-game release. You know what would make this comparison more difficult? If the localizer actually works alongside the original game development, simultaneously working on the game and localizing it. So what's left is to judge the game based on the translations instead of aesthetical changes and whether or not they're faithful to the Japanese counterparts. This is why I can't form a concrete opinion. We're not sure if Nintendo of America or Nintendo of Europe is going to bring us a good product or a bad product. We can speculate how terribly or how not terribly Nintendo of America or Nintendo of Europe would perform in the localization based on their past games, but for now, in terms of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, we can't know for sure. We have to wait for the game to be released or wait for more news to come in. Again, this is what you should have done to all upcoming games anyway. The director has this to say for the past titles.
For past titles, because the Japanese version was done, our challenge was then to figure out what it is we need to do to make sure this game is made available in overseas, as well as we're able to sell this product. In that sense, I was open to make any changes that were necessary to make sure everybody can enjoy this game.
Well, that doesn't sound good, does it? You know, I have faith to the Japanese game devs. If there are any changes that the localizers didn't like, then the Japanese game devs can confront these localizers about it. Knowing about the nature of Japanese games, let's just say that a lot of the developers really don't like it when you tell them what's right and what's not right to do. They're not pussies, they're very insistent. So they're gonna bring in as much as fight as you guys are bringing in to the fight against censorship. And that is, if they're brave enough to fight against it. The problem comes when they come in under pressure. The problem comes when they're being bullied and forced to make those sorts of changes. Changes that the localizers would personally feel comfortable with, but not for the general audiences who are going to buy the game. This is the part that I'm genuinely worried towards. I'm worried that these game devs are gonna be bullied by these moralizing busybodies to cater into them, or else people won't buy the game in the West. I'm worried that the localizers are going to project their morality into the consumers of this game and think, hey, people are not comfortable with boob sliders, people are not comfortable with those costumes, which can also be localized to, hey, I am not comfortable with boob sliders, I am not comfortable with those costumes. In short, I am very skeptical, but I can't form an opinion as of yet. The only way for us to know is if we wait for Xenoblade Chronicles 2 to come, and regardless whether or not the localization is horrible, I just hope that at least it's a good game. But there's one thing that you can definitely do. If a game developer from either Japan or the West are being bullied by the moral busybodies, send them your biggest support through the social media. Tell them that, hey, don't listen to these moral busybodies. Don't listen to any of their demands of censorship. Their feelings are not important. They're not your consumers and they won't buy your games anyway. We as customers want your games to be just as how you intended to be and not have a bunch of moral guardians telling you what's right to do and what's not right to do. Will Nintendo of Europe be about as horrendous as Nintendo of America at shoving their morals up to Japanese game developers? Will the Japanese game developers stay persistent in the original direction of the game and not catering to the mindset of the moral guardians? Tune in next week in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Localization. And by next week, I mean when Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is released or there are any more info about the game. It's going to take a while. That's all for the video today. If you like this, you can go ahead, click the like button, and subscribe for more. If you wish, you can support me on Patreon. And thanks for watching.